Hello and welcome to episode 23 of the SWR Darts Coaching podcast with me, Sean, a PDPA Level 1, JDC Level 2, Sight Right and Dartsight accredited and trained darts coach. Many thanks to everyone that has listened to the previous episodes. I noticed a spike recently in the analytics of people listening to the episodes. Whether that's now because this is also available on YouTube and Amazon Music, I honestly don't know. But it's great to see that people are finding the podcast, people are finding some episodes helpful. I know now with Spotify, the AI feature of Spotify is starting to break down the podcast into various segments. So it'll tell you what we're talking about in various segments. That's great as well that it does that. Obviously, the last couple of episodes have been focused on the journey to Bridlington to play in the British Open this year. But this one, I'm going to sort of go into a focus of what I am looking forward to as we're coming into the core darts month. I've got some questions that I've been asked recently that I'm just going to share with my opinions on. One of the main topics of this episode, hypnosis. Can it work? Does it work? And what's the point behind it? So hypnosis for players is something that I have recently spent a little bit of time in doing, talking to people about. I have had it myself, and I'm going to talk about my experiences of that. And new feature on this podcast now, I'm going to finish with one of my practice games. At the end, I'm going to talk you through my practice game and talk you through how it works. And today, it's number 53 from my website. And it is the Rusho's 5-4-3-2-1 game and why I absolutely love and adore this game. So, that is the breakdown of what we're going to do in this podcast. So, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we're coming into peak dart season, as a lot of people will call it. I've been seeing loads of posts recently. Oh, you know, this is my month for December with the PDC World Championships up and coming. And yeah, very much same here. I'm looking forward to the PDC Worlds as anyone else. I enjoy the early rounds more. I enjoy seeing the players who are just qualifying for the first time. I know there's going to be a lot of darts players darts fans, that won't enjoy them ones because they aren't big games, they aren't big averages, because, you know, the pace of the game will be different. But the one I want to talk about is the one that not a lot of people are talking about in this episode, and that is the WDF World Championships, which are happening at Lakeside. I've never been to Lakeside. It's on my bucket list. I was tempted again this year to go. Things just don't always marry up how I'd like them to. So unfortunately, I'm not going to Lakeside this year again. But it is very much on my bucket list for next year. Lakeside is. I just really, really like Lakeside. I think there's something about the place that whenever I see it on TV, obviously it brings back great memories for me. Because when I first started getting into darts, way back when, Lakeside was probably the first tournament I actually spent a lot of time watching, because at the time I hadn't got Sky, so we never watched the PDC side of darts. So you used to watch the BDO as it was then. Used to watch that on the BBC. So the WDF and Lakeside more than the WDF, I suppose. Lakeside holds a special thing for me because that's where I first watched a lot of my darts. Mark Webster, I remember, was the first world champion that I watched when I got into darts, as was Anastasia Dobromyslova in the women's game. That was the first year I was obsessed with the game, and they were the first. They were the two world champions that year at the BDO. So yeah, that's my affiliation for Lakeside in a way, but. Talking of it, no one seems to be talking about it at the moment, and I do understand why. I honestly do understand why. I think the WDF gets a lot of flack because, you know, it's not as high profile as the PDC. We don't see the players as often. If you track a lot of the modus, in the Super Series and probably things like that, you're going to know some of the players that are there. But if you don't sort of follow that, you solely track the PDC, you're not going to know a lot of the darts players that are going to be playing at the WDF Worlds. So I'm not going to sort of sit here and say, well, this is who I think is going to win it and everything like that. But I am going to give my opinion on who I think is going to do well, who to watch out for, potentially. So I'm going to talk about the men's game first, and then obviously I'm going to talk about the women's game. So the men's game, obviously we have the first round fixtures, and then the winner of a game will then go on and play, one of the seeds. So, Jimmy Van Schie, I think is someone very much to watch this year, at the Worlds. Looking around the other players that are there, Ryan Hogarth, I think can have a good tournament. I think he's a player that, I do think can do very well. Dave Pallett, another player. Mitchell Laurie, a lot of people will be looking out to see how he does. What a fantastic young talent he is. Muramatsu, one of the Japanese players, I think he's someone that you can't really rule out in a way. I think he's going to probably cause a few shocks. Neil Duff, again, we know what he can do in Jim McEwen. Jensen Walker, again, another very, very talented young player who I think's got a little bit of a tough draw in his first round fixture, and then obviously plays Dave Fathom in the next round. But yeah, there's some good players. There's going to be some good players there, and as I say, don't dismiss the WDF Worlds. Yes, you're not probably going to see a Luke Humphreys versus Luke Littler game. I'm not going to sit here and say that you will. But you're going to see some good darts across the week. And it's a shame that I think they've changed the format or the scheduling this year a little bit. I don't know the reasons they've done that. I don't follow it. But I know the ticket sales haven't been strong, which is a shame. Again, I could still go if I can get tickets. I could still go if I wish to. I just haven't got the time to go down there for a couple of days. I'm recently just coming off of like a week's holiday myself. So, I'm stacked with coaching between now and Christmas. So, yeah, it's good. I really like watching the WDF. I think this year it's on S4C or SC4. I can't remember how it's pronounced. On the, like Freeview channels and obviously free-to-air channels. So that's great. I know they had a situation a few years ago where it was on YouTube and it was absolutely terrible coverage. It was. And again, I think that's where we're in this area of a lot of darts fans have lost faith with the, what was the BDO and now the WDF, because the coverage has always been wishy-washy. Shall we use that phrase? Wishy-washy. The coverage has not been the best. So I think because of that, that's why, we're not seeing it talked about enough. And I do think that, for someone who's new to darts over the last couple of years, they might look at this and go, oh God, what is this? This is nowhere as close to the PDC. And no, it isn't. But they're still fabulous darts players. They're still top quality darts players. And I just hope they get the love that they deserve, and I don't feel they will. But again, in the men's draw, if I'm pinning my colours to a mast, I think Jimmy Van Schie is my sort of main throw. And I don't, I think you've got to look at Mitchell Laurie. I honestly do. I think that young man is an absolute talent. He's got a really tough draw though, at Mariyama, and then obviously he plays Brendan in the next round. But yeah, I think we're going to see some good games down there. Do I see any of the old guards winning it? I don't. If I'm honest, I don't. I think they'll give a good account of themselves. But I do think we'll see a nice new name on the trophy. And obviously, hopefully, it'll be a young player as well. Into the women's side of this then. So the women's again, I know it gets a lot of stick online, and I do understand it a little bit. But some talented players in here as well. So the format's different for the women. It's not as long a format, but we've got some great players here. Who do I go with here? Listen, I think this is extremely wide open. Lorraine Hyde, for me, is having a good season. She's coming to the end of a good season. I think she's the one that could really push on. Dieter Hedman has got an interesting game. She will play the winner of Vaina Keenan and Mikuru Suzuki. Now, that could be a very, very tasty game, I think. The fact that Vaina and Suzuki are playing each other, that's going to be definitely a one to watch. Whoever wins that plays Dieter Hedman. Dieter's going to be in for a little bit of a tricky game there for me. And then the winner of that could potentially be playing who I think would be the winner of Sophie McKinley and Paige Pauling. So, two really good stars of the ladies' game. They're going to be, I presume, possibly going against each other there. Although Paige Pauling has got to get past Zolly Kofa, who's the qualifier she's got to play. But I do think Paige will just be able to get through that game. And then Sophie McKinley, Paige Pauling, that's going to be a fantastic game to watch. Lorraine Hyde is going to play the winner of Murphy Dawson. So Paula Murphy always does okay at Lakeside. I'm not familiar with Durson, unfortunately, so I can't really speak there. Rihanna Sullivan, again, another player, Eileen de Graaf. You can't rule them players out from also having a good run in this tournament. But I'm going to pin my colours to Lorraine Hyde. I'm going to pin my colours to Lorraine Hyde. That's who I'm going with from the women's. I'm going to go with Lorraine Hyde. I just feel that, she's coming into some good form towards the end of this year. She's playing some good darts from what I've seen. So yeah, that's where I'm pinning my colours there. So from the men's game, I'm going to go Jimmy Van Schie. And I did say I wasn't going to do predictions, didn't I? So from the men's game, I'm going to go Jimmy Van Schie. From the women's game, I'm going to Lorraine Hyde. And that is my WDF World Championship sort of, little look at. I will be doing a lot of talking about that, probably on my TikTok, just because I don't think it's going to get the coverage it deserves. I honestly don't, but I hope it does. For me, it's just a great tournament. I honestly do think it's a fantastic tournament. I understand, as I said, the fact that it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. But yeah, let's give it some love, folks. Let's give it some love. So, next part of this podcast for me, it's something that I do quite a few Q&As on TikTok. I get sent loads of messages on Facebook asking me, why am I hitting the fives a lot? I haven't seen you throw, so I don't know. Well, what would you suggest? I haven't seen you throw. I don't know. And it got me wondering and questioning. People give out advice like it's, like the sweets, like the candy at the moment, I've noticed. But should you be giving out advice if you've not seen the player? So I see a lot of stuff on TikTok and other platforms, if you want to get better at darts, you need to do these two things. And that's what they say. I saw one the other day. If you want to get better at darts, you need to make sure your arm goes straight on your follow through. Okay. So if I'm standing left side centre of the dartboard and I'm a right-handed thrower, I'm then adjusting my body to throw into the centre of the dartboard. But as long as my arm's going straight, I'm going to hit the 20s. Well, no, if my arm's going straight, I'm probably going to hit the surround because I've adjusted my body to throw across. And it's them sort of things that always get me when I see it. I always talk about this in a coaching session, and it makes me laugh still to this day. I had a player recently in a coaching session ask me if he was gripping the dart too tightly. And I went, I beg your pardon? He went, am I gripping this dart too tightly? He says, because I've been told online that I need to just have it as a loose grip. He says, so am I gripping it too hard? And I went, how the hell would I know? I'm not your dart. And I offered him my finger. I said, grab my finger. He's like, what? I said, grab my finger. He says, that's weird. I said, just the same as you asking me if you're gripping your dart too hard. I said, you don't know. I said, I wouldn't ask you to grip my finger. I said, you would grip my finger differently how you would grip your dart. I would hope anyway. But you wouldn't do that. And this is what got me thinking about these questions that I get sent. And I've spoken to a couple of other coaches and we were on about this. Can you give out advice without seeing the player, specifically to a player? And I always say on my TikToks, when someone comes on my TikTok live and goes, I'm a 40 average player, I want to be a 60 average player, how can I get there? I always ask, well, what are you training? What's your training routine? What's your training structure? What are you doing there? But then the moment someone asks me, why am I always hitting the fives? I'm not going to give them an answer. I've got an idea in my head why potentially you're hitting more fives than ones, or you're hitting more fives than 20s. I've got a potential idea in my head, but I can't give you that answer because I've not seen you throw. But someone asked me the other day, and I wrote a few of them down. What are the most common mistakes I see in a player? And I said to him, when I'm coaching a player, I see the same mistake in virtually everyone that walks through my door. And that is a lack of pre-throw routine. A lack of consistent setup before they deliver the darts. But then I'll ask them, what are you looking for in your darts game? And they'll go, I'm not looking to be more consistent with my throw. So why aren't you getting into a consistent pre-throw routine that will then aid your throw, so that when you are training at home and when you go play in the pub or you go play in the comps, you're doing exactly the same? Now that's, for me, is a given. I've had a pre-throw routine for many a year before I even started coaching. I had the same routine I would do before I throw. I've probably tweaked it a little bit over the last sort of, 24 months, 2 years, if you will. I've probably have tweaked it a little bit due to more knowledge of the game and more knowledge of the mindset that I've picked up. But I had another question only recently on a TikTok, and it's like, what dart should I use? And I went, wow, how can you ask me that? And he's like, well, you're a darts coach. Yeah, I'm a darts coach. That doesn't mean I know what dart you should be using. I don't know how you grip the dart. Are you a 2-pincher? Are you a 1-pinch? Do you have all 4 fingers on that dart? Do you grip at the rear? Is your pinch point at the rear? Is your pinch point at the front? I don't know them sort of things. Now, I always say to people, look at the Shot Zen range and look at the, I think it's the Amberjack range in Red Dragon. They're nice entry-level darts. But at the same time, I'm not going to turn around to someone and say, oh, you want to use this dart, but I've never seen them grip a dart. So it's this constant offering of advice that makes me wonder, where do we go with this as coaches? There's a lot of PDPA coaches out there now, and I think that's a good thing and a bad thing. And I've said this before, and I've said this to people within the industry, that I'm not worried about the amount of coaches that we're putting into the system. I think that's great. The more coaches that are out there, the better we can get of the understanding of this game of darts. But it's what a coach does. Is a coach giving out advice based on their experience? Is a coach giving out advice that he's not seen the player do? I have had a player come to me recently who's been to another coach, and he's come to me, and I straight away talked about 2 areas of his game. And he went, well, where I went previously, he never mentioned that. And I'm like, well, one of them for me is a fundamental that should always be in everyone's approach, and every coach should be talking about it. And the other one's just one of them things that I would have picked up on. But that then makes you wonder that where the advice that we're giving out, when we're getting asked questions, what are we giving out the correct advice? Should we be giving out advice? I had another one the other day, what's a good warm-up routine? And I said, okay, so what are we talking here? How long have we got for the warm-up? And he went, I just want, a routine that's going to help me throw better. I went, well, it doesn't work like that. Your warm-up routine, are we talking the warm-up before you actually play a match? Are we talking your warm-up before you go into a training session? Because they can be two different things. The warm-up before you go into a match might only consist of 9 darts. The warm-up before you go into a fully pledged hours training routine could be totally different. So again, I want to ask these extra questions to get the extra advice from the player before we start that. Because I could be giving out wrong advice, and I probably have given out wrong advice at some point. I'm not going to sit here and say that every bit of advice I give out is gospel. I've listened back to some of my earlier podcasts, and I'm like, I wouldn't have done that now. Because we change our philosophies, we change our approach to things as we go forward as well. So, yeah, I suppose this one's overrun a little bit more than what I was going to get into. And I was going to talk more about the questions that I got asked, and I've probably, diverted off that. But honestly, if you guys have got questions, put them in the comments. And I will do my best to answer as many of them as I can. So, how can we teach, a more consistent follow-through? So how can we teach a more consistent follow-through? Well, for me it's all about making sure that we're aligned correctly, and that when we're getting the release of the dart going through, we're releasing it down the vision line, and we're committing to the line of throw. The arm's following the dart, it's committing to the line of throw. All them sort of things would come into that area. But then if I've got someone who's saying to me, well, I can't get my arm to go all the way through, what should I do? Well, there's no point in me just automatically going, you've got to make sure your arm goes all the way through, mate. Because he might not be able to. There may be some reason that's holding him from going all the way through. So again, I then need to look at that player's throw. I need to assess what that player's doing. So giving out advice, which is not really what we were going to talk about here. We're going to talk about the questions that I've been asked. But questions and advice as someone who's not seen the player throw, be wary of the answers, I suppose, is what I'm going to say there. But it also, one coach can give you one piece of advice on your throw that he's seen with you, and another coach may see it differently as well. Why? Because we all see things differently. Because that's this game of darts. We all throw it differently, and the opinions are always different. Same in football. So, yeah, probably gone off the topic a little bit there, I feel, but that's what I think about, the questions I get asked. And obviously the most common one is, how can I be more consistent? And one of the only things I really ever reply to that is, what's your training plan? So, next bit of this podcast. This could be an interesting one. Hypnosis. Does it work? Can it work? Yes and yes. Darts hypnosis, or just hypnosis in general, is something that I think is becoming more and more prevalent in darts. There are players at the top level of the game that are going to see sports mindset coaches trying to develop this hypnosis side of it, that's going to help you trigger things in your performance mindset. Anyone who knows anything about it, Alice Pinion. If you look up Alice Pinion online, she is an absolutely fantastic sports psychologist, sports mindset coach, whatever you wish to call it. I've done I've done a few sessions, not many. I think I did 3 or maybe 4 sessions with Alice. And, she's got 20 years in using hypnotherapy, CBT and mind coaching. And she produced a book. She's in the process of producing another one, I believe, at the moment, as I talk there. But she produced a book called The Essential Sporting Mind Toolkit. And wow, that book is absolutely fantastic. And I encourage anyone to get hold of it. There are various other avenues with hypnosis. With Alice, she did some. I don't know I don't want to class them. They are hypnosis tapes. I suppose tapes is what we'd call them back in the 90s. But they're just like, they're audio recordings that you get when you're in your nice Zen place. You put them on, and it helps you to control your mind. And I've done one on my own, to be honest. And I've been using it. I've been using it with a player who comes to me regular for one-to-one coaching. And we've been, he's been using this. It was dead funny at first. I said, listen, you've got to put a disclaimer in here. Make sure you don't, listen to you while you're driving. Don't make sure, when you're operating heavy machinery. And he was like, why is that? I was like, well, it's hypnosis. I said it could send you to sleep. And he went, I doubt you'll send me asleep, Sean. And as if you're still listening to this podcast, you may be half asleep anyway, from just listening to the drabble I've had from the WDF, and my coaching advice sections. But that's what their aim is. The aim is to make you feel, relaxed, and then to sort of try and open the inner mind, if you will, to try and unlock your subconscious sometimes. And there's a few already about there on YouTube, etc. I know that, there's a report going on that Stephen Bunting is using it. A lot of players who've got dartitis use hypnosis, and I've spoken to a couple of people who've done hypnosis for dartitis, and they found it really, really useful. So yeah, I think hypnosis is something that's going to become more and more popular in this game. I think we're going to see a lot more people talking about the mindset, the sporting psychological mindset. I think that's going to come into play a lot more over the next sort of couple of years. That's right, it's not the camera, not the audio there. That's going to come into it over the next couple of years. And as I say, for me, I've been doing it. It's helped me. I had a situation where I didn't want to go out and play darts. I've always joked about, coaches coach, players play. But I knew that I wanted to go out and play again. And when I went out and played, I had to, really battle myself to want to go, and walk through that door of the pub and go and play darts. I always feel that I've got this sort of sticker on my back saying I'm a darts coach, I'm good. And I'm not. I'm a good darts coach, but I'm not a good darts player. And, through the hypnosis and through everything like that and opening up the psychological mind, I've now realised that I've got to segregate things in my mind. So when I'm going there as a player, I focus and look at it different than how I do as a coach. I try not to coach when I'm at the darts. So if I go to turn up for my team, or when I was turning up for my team, someone would come and ask me a question about their throw, and I'd just be like, I don't know. I don't look at you. I don't follow you. Because I don't want to be opening up the two windows. And that's all down through hypnosis. That's all been done through hypnosis, through meditation stuff, that I've achieved the ability to sort of switch off when I'm playing darts and not think about what I'm doing. I'm there. I'm aware of the moment of what I'm doing. Of course I am. But one thing I'm probably going to talk about in the next podcast, offensive and defensive based darts players. I've become a very defensive based darts player, but it helps me. I'm winning legs. I'm winning games. So because I'm winning games with this defensive approach, that's all come from my hypnosis work and my mindset coaching that I've done. That's made me into that type of player a little bit, but it works for me. I never chase averages. I've always said it on here, I don't care for averages. Dead often on my TikToks, people go, oh, what's your average? What's your average? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? How do you not know? Because I don't know. I don't care for a running average. I don't care for an average at the end of the game. I'm focused on two elements when I'm playing darts. One, am I enjoying it? I am, yeah, great, happy days. And two, can I get to zero to get the tick in the box? They are the only two things I'm focused on. Am I enjoying it? And can I get a zero? Okay, so I've enjoyed it. I've not won that leg of darts. Doesn't matter. I go into the next leg. Can I enjoy it? Can I try and get to 0 and get a tick in the box? And that's all come from a hypnosis audio thing that Alice did for me and that I've done for myself as well, just helping me to get through that. And I'm looking at, like I say, I'm working with that with players, certain players that have been coming to me. I've passed on this audio clip. It's about 15 minutes long. And they've said they found it useful for them moments where they're struggling with their darts game. They've put it on in the background, having me there talking to them, talking them through as they're just having a throw. So yeah, hypnosis, can it work? Yes. Is it going to be more popular in the game soon? Yes. And should you try it? My answer there is yes. So, last part of this podcast. I did it last time and I think it went quite well. A few people commented that they found it useful. So, I'm going to talk about a practice game, training game as I prefer to call it. But of course, unfortunately, on my website, they all say darts practice because I'm not going back to change them all. And this is game number 53. So number 53 on the training library, the practice library. And it's the game called Rusho's 5-4-3-2-1. Now, Rusho's 5-4-3-2-1 was my friend Steve Rushton, who runs the Darts Academy with me here in Stoke. This was a game he pitched to me ages ago that he did, and I loved it, and I've done it ever since. And believe me, I love doing this game. How does it work? Dead simple. We start with 501. We can play this solo, by the way. We can play it as a pairs, but you can do this solo. So you start at 501. Your aim for your next score is to have the 100 column showing a 4. So in theory, as long as if you score 3, okay, I know, I can hear you all, oh my word, I only scored 3. But even if you score 3 and put your score on 498, right, you are now on a 4. So 501 and now 498. So we've moved down to the 4. Now we need to move down to the 3. So of course, in this moment now, we need as good as a ton or above to go down to a 3. So let's just say, argument's sake, we hit that ton. So we're on 498, we've hit a ton, we're now on 398. So our board at the moment reads a score of 3 and a score of a ton. But more importantly, the main column that counts in a game of darts, which is your score left, is now showing 398. So yes, you have guessed correctly. If you are ahead of me, your next score needs to start with a 2. So again, we need a ton or more. Let's say we get a 60. So getting a 60, that'll put us on 338. So again, we've now got 2 3s here. We've got 2 3s in a row. So if you're playing on what I call the advanced mode of this game, you're out. Okay. But I play whereby I give a player a life. I say you've got 1 life. So you're now on 338. You can use your life and carry on this game. And your next score now has to start on a 2. So if you were to hit another 60 for argument's sake, you'd be on 278. And you continue the game, but now you've got no lives. You continue to do this until you get under 199. The way I play it out, and I put this on my website, is that if you can get under 170, you're then going to have 9 darts to finish that game. I've done it whereby I've said if you get under 199, you have 6 darts to finish the game. But if you've still got your life left, you add that life on to give you 9 darts. But even in the process of the way the game's laid out on my website, if you are under 170 and you've got 9 darts and you've still got your life, you've got 12 darts then to finish that game. Now, if you can get under 170, that's what we're looking for, and to still have your life intact. That's what we're looking for. Because what he's basically meaning is that every visit you're coming up, it's not that situation of whereby going you can accept a 45, you can accept a 26. You're going to hit them, of course you are. But when you've hit them, you then need to focus on your next 3 darts, because your next 3 darts need to help you to get onto the next number. Hence the game 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's a really good game. It's one that I've thrown into my repertoire quite regular. It's one I do quite regular with players that come to me for one-to-one coaching. We do, as I say, whereby you've got one life. I do it with a couple of players where we don't have any lives at all. And the moment you're out, you lose that leg. You then restart the game. So you lose that leg, we restart the game. And, you play it as a long format match, best of 11, best of 15, etc. And the reason behind the 5-4-3-2-1 is we're still having that 5-0-1 element. Yes, we might not be getting down to finishes, potentially. We might not be doing a lot of finishing. Is that a problem? Well, no, because we're going to do that in other training games, aren't we? We're going to focus on our setups and our finishing in other training games. This is a power scoring training game, which effectively will bring in setups and doubles if you can get down to being under 170 and have darts available to go for it. So it's number 53 from the website, Rusho's 5-4-3-2-1. Just to quickly reiterate and recap, you start on 501. Your next score needs to start with a 4. Your next score then needs to start with a 3. Your next score needs to start with a 2. And your next score needs to start with a 1. And if they don't, if you've got playing with lives, you can use a life up to carry on. But if you've got no lives left and you've got 2 scores in a row, which is of a 3, for instance, you are out of the game. Rusho's 5-4-3-2-1, number 53, on my website, swrdartscoaching.co.uk/practice. So, thank you very much for listening if you are still with me this far in. It is really appreciated here in episode 23. Episode 24 is going to be my focus on offensive and defensive dart players. How can you be an offensive dart player and how can you be a defensive dart player? Can you win games by being a defensive dart player? The answer is yes. I will give you that in advance because I have done. But what are the pitfalls of being an offensive darts player? So that's going to be in episode 24. We're also in episode 24. We'll probably touch on what's happened in the WDF Worlds because it will probably be recorded after that. And it might just be recorded in before the PDC Worlds start as well. So I'll give you my opinions on how I feel the PDC Worlds will go. And of course, we'll pick up another game from the website to talk about at the end. If you've enjoyed this podcast, there is a button, of course, for you to say, I like this. And you can share it with others that you feel might enjoy these podcasts that I do. Again, we're across different platforms now, so we're on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music. So whichever platform you're on, please make sure you subscribe and follow it. Any comments you've got, any questions you've got, feel free to drop them in the comments of the platform you're listening to on, or you can simply visit my website, swrdartscoaching.co.uk, click on the contact button, and you can send me a little cheeky email. You can also find me, of course, on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name a social media platform, I think I'm on there. You've got to be everywhere, as I was once told on a marketing course many, many years back. Thank you very much for listening. I hope to speak to you in the next one. And everyone, please, just keep enjoying your darts.